All right. Good morning, everyone. Good morning indeed, and welcome to the first session of our LPG4 webinar series. I'm Samuel Maubon. I'm the General Manager of Liquid Gas Europe, and it's my pleasure to kick off this webinar as a moderator for this session this morning. I'd like to start with a little disclaimer. We are relatively new to this exercise of virtual roundtables, but we've worked hard with the team to make sure it would be as interesting and lively as possible this morning. So hopefully we will live up to that promise. We all know too well that sometimes technology can work in surprising ways. So we hope everything will run smoothly. But please bear with us if it does not. We will be talking about disruptions today, and in particular how the LPG industry is embracing these disruptions. This is no doubt a very timely and relevant topic because, as we know, there are plenty of disruptions on site for the energy industry and the energy environment. Some of these disruptions are of a very policy nature, and in particular around the need to tackle climate change. That's a particular focus, obviously, of EU policies. The European Green Deal, in particular, the new European Green Deal, is a flagship of the current Commission, and it will be rolled out in a number of legislative proposals in the next 4 years. So obviously that's a key area that we will be touching upon this morning on this discussion. Some other disruptions are more of a societal nature, and for instance, with regards to the evolving consumer habits. And last but not least, we will also be talking about technological disruptions that are affecting the energy industry and the LPG industry in particular. The need to go digital is a particular stark example, which affects companies at all levels. To do that, we have gathered a very solid panel of 4 experts with a very diverse set of profiles, which is a strength of this group. They will be therefore looking at these disruptions from a number of different perspectives. While we're on the topic of the panelists, I would like to inform you that there was a little change in the program. We've just learned yesterday that unfortunately our colleague Federica Sabati from the European Heating Industry Association got sick over the weekend. Nothing too serious, fortunately, nothing related to the COVID-19. But she was unable to join us this morning. But her colleague, Paolo Basso, who is Policy Director for EHI, has kindly accepted to replace her at short notice. So we thank him very much for that. And we obviously wish Federica to get well soon. This roundtable will consist in an open discussion with and between the panelists, but we also want you, the audience, to take part in the discussion. And to do that, please make sure that you ask your questions in writing or post your comments in the little chat box, on the right side of your screen. When you do that, please remember to indicate your name and the organization that you represent, so that our panelists know who is addressing the question. And we also know, indicate that in your question, whether your question is addressed to the panel in general or to one of them in particular. Now, without further ado, we will be turning to our first panelist, Iskra Mihailova. Before I leave her the floor, I just would like to quickly introduce her. She is a member of the European Parliament. She was elected in 2014, so she is doing a second term in the European Parliament. She notably sits in the Energy and Industry Committee of the European Parliament, where she has been appointed, and she is currently a shadow rapporteur for a non-legislative report dealing with maximizing the energy efficiency potential of the EU building stock, which will feed into the Commission proposal for the renovation wave, which is due for September this year. Ms. Mihailova comes from Bulgaria. She's affiliated with the Renew Europe political group, which was formerly called the ALDE group, the Alliance of Liberals and Democrats. Prior to joining the European Parliament, she's had a very impressive political career in Bulgaria, having been Deputy Minister for Regional Policy, Minister for the Environment, and also Chair of the Environment Committee in the National Assembly. And now over to you, Iskra, to give us a few introductory remarks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I'll begin with this to thank for the invitation to take part in this very distinguished discussion. This is my pleasure to participate and share what is going on in the European Parliament, which is in the different way of working now because of the pandemic of COVID-19. But we continue working very active. And I hope very soon in July, we will have the vote in ITRA committee on this report on maximizing the energy efficiency in the European building stock. But I'll begin with this, that our work in the Parliament nowadays is focused on the recovery plan proposed by the European Commission, new multi-annual financial framework, and of course, Green Deal and digital transition with all related to them legislative documents proposed by the European Commission. I speak about the circular economy, small and medium-sized enterprises, from farm to fork strategy, data strategy, white book for artificial intelligence, and many other. So this is the core of the work of the Parliament at the moment, because we do understand that the Green Deal as a new strategy for development of the European Union, which is focused into a fair prosperity society with a modern, resource efficient and competitive economy, could be achieved only through the small steps in all the sectors of the European economy. So we try to make these steps as efficient as possible, thinking about the reflection of the society and the price which should be paid by the European citizens for this green and digital transformation of the European Union. The goal for carbon neutral economy in 2050 is extremely ambitious goal, which is affected all the sectors of the life of European citizens. And we have to have this in mind when we prepare all the legislative documents and all the steps for further implementation of the Green Deal. Recovery plan is related to the Green Deal, but it gives already the financial proportions for the implementation of the steps to achieve the goals of the Green Deal. Recovery plan is extremely important, not only for the next 2 years, but to the next 10 years, probably, including the multi-annual financial framework for the next planning period. It is important how the Union will plan to invest the public money and how Union will be able to attract the private investors and to attract the whole business around Europe to participate in implementation of the policies. Not only to try to avoid the disruption effect, but also to participate and achieve successful results and to accept all these policy measures as a constructive but not destructive measures. So in this plan, we expect, as you mentioned, we expect the renovation wave, which is one of the key elements of all set of documents related to a recovery plan and Green Deal of the European Union. I should mention that the key element in all these documents is energy transformation of the European Union, production of energy, distribution of energy, use of the energy, efficiency of the energy using, all these, and transformation for decarbonization of energy production and use. These are key elements of all these documents which are already mentioned, and they will be key elements of all policies we are going to follow in the future coming years. So that's why the renovation wave is so much expected, not only in the parliament, but also in the society, between the companies who deliver energy services, companies who work in the field of heating and cooling, companies who are working on construction materials, companies who are related to the construction process, and in the end, management companies who will be responsible for the efficient energy using in the building stock of the European Union. Let me just remind that new buildings today tend to consume only half of the energy that similar new buildings 20 years ago for their operation and use, or even less. However, approximately 80% of today's buildings will still be in use in 2050. So we have to think about the quality of these buildings and quality of all the services related to these buildings and their efficient use. Also to think about the health and conditions, the health of the citizens and the conditions which are these buildings provide to the European citizens. I mean, not only residential buildings, but also public buildings and all variety of the owners of the buildings around the European Union. What is interesting about this report is that we try to combine the different approaches of the political groups, beginning from financial issues, how to finance the process of renovation, and ending with the social issues, how to cover the energy poverty, how to help the social groups which are in the very poor conditions and cannot afford the expenses of the renovation and energy efficiency, and including between these two different points, digitalization of the processes, management of the buildings, management of the construction, and management of all services which are I already mentioned. So this is our report. We plan to vote in each committee in July. We hope that we'll be able to vote in the Parliament, this position of the Parliament, before the European Commission will launch the final version of Renovation Wave. But in any case, we are ready to work in a close cooperation with the Commission. But even more important, we are ready to work in close cooperation with the European business and European citizens, European cities and local authorities to achieve the targets which are mentioned in the Green Deal. So this is our work in the Parliament. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much for this very interesting introduction. I mean, I think you covered a number of very important issues that we need to be reflected in, that are being reflected in the Parliament report. I just wanted to pick up one specific issue, which is energy poverty, which you mentioned yourself. That's a very important social element that needs to be reflected in this push towards renovating European buildings. And my question was around a new concept, a new principle that the Commission is now introducing, which is called the Just Transition Mechanism, which is really meant to support, in particular, the regions of Europe that are heavily relying on coal mining, to help them convert the local industries into cleaner industries. But I was just wondering whether this instrument should not or could not be connected with the energy poverty issue, and so that the just transition mechanism would be expanded to also help the consumers that struggle, paying their energy bills, to help them transition towards cleaner and more affordable way of heating their homes, for instance. Do you think that is something that could be feasible?
Just transition mechanism and just transition fund is a very interesting new instrument. Actually, the instrument is focused on particular regions of the European Union, regions which are depending of the mining industry and some constructions related to the coal. So I do not think that we can use this particular instrument to cover the needs of energy poverty in all the regions of the European Union, because we have the energy poverty in European capitals, in some of their areas, but also in rural areas, in some small cities around Europe, and most of them are not related to these particular mentioned regions with the mining production. So the idea which I personally insist to be in place in our report is to send a very strong message to the member states that they should use all available financial instruments and lines of the European Union in combination with the private support and national budgets to afford the all efforts concerning energy efficiency, including energy poverty, because the social programs supported by the fund, the European Social Fund, for example, can support the families and areas with energy poverty. And it is absolutely possible if the member states and the regions and local authorities put this option in their plans for transition, for energy transition, and use in a flexible way the opportunities of the structural funds. Also, Just Transition Fund can help indirectly the whole idea of energy efficiency of the buildings, because we calculate that all the workers in the mining industries can receive new qualification, professional qualification, and work in construction sector and invest their efforts in renovation of the buildings, and in this way save their jobs and be able to afford the energy efficiency transition and not to be part of the energy poverty groups. So there are many different approaches, of course, including Just Transition Fund, but also all structural funds, in InvestEU program, and all financial instruments which are open now for the member states.
Very good. Thank you very much, Iskra. And now I would like to switch to our second panelist, Cédric Caudron. I just would like to say a few words about Cédric's profile. Cédric is Director for Innovation and Research and Development at UGI International. He's in charge of his activity for all the UGI businesses across Europe, and he also works really closely with the US on these matters. He joined the company in 2005, where he was notably in charge of developing the LPG network activities. Since he took over the innovation front of the company, he notably managed various Internet of Things projects and the setup of a collaborative innovation lab. He originally comes from France and graduated in engineering from the Alès School of Mines. Now, the floor is yours, Cédric, for your introductory remarks.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you. Well, it's a great honor to be among you today around this virtual table, and on behalf of UGI International, and to be clear, it's the first time for me, so it's a new thing. So when you talk about this subject for today, the energy in an era of disruption, my first thought was that it's really a huge topic to address, and also an amazing one. And in fact, it all depends on the approach we take. We can indeed appreciate the evolution of our customer demand in terms of service and the response that our industry offers in terms of customer experience. We can also appreciate the disruptions that occur in our daily operation and the way we conduct our business. And finally, we can talk about the product itself, the propane and butane that we deliver to our customer every day. And each of them, service, process, and product, is today subject to profound transformation, and with a time frame that maybe is different. And due to the way the LPG is delivered, our industry is concerned by each of them. We make the direct link between the product and the product we sell and the customer. And we are responsible for every single part of the value chain. And in that way, we are committed to deliver clean, affordable, and convenient solution with the best customer service. And if I go on the digital, for example, digital has been and still is reshaping companies. And for some of them, it has been brutal and even capital. Many of the brand name we knew when we were kids are no longer present today because they have not adapted or found a way to reinvent themselves. And other names have emerged and now compete with established businesses. Telephony and communication network, for example, are full of example. And just imagine that no, it's possible to pay with your phone and without going through your bank service. So established business finds themselves competing with outsiders, and that is a real threat. And we need to take into account that our customers are in this environment daily, and as a result, their expectation is growing regarding the service we offer. And in the age of the internet, everything must be accessible with a minimum of click and when you want it. And that maybe is a bad effect because it's easy to complain on the web, so the requirement of quality is also present. And our industry is evolving accordingly. Online services and digital platforms are offered by most LPG distributors. It's now possible to order your gas cylinder on the internet and have them delivered to your home or at the door of your restaurant. And more vending machines are installed every year, making access to your product, to our product, even easier. So this revolution is not over, and we are deploying more and more connected devices at our customers' property, and in particular to control the filling level of gas tank. And with the Internet of Things technology, it has changed the business model of telemetry and made it accessible to a greater number because it changed completely the business model of the telemetry. And this is at the service of our customer to ensure continuity of supply and enable us to gain enable us to gain in logistical efficiency. And more recently, we have introduced augmented reality into our sales process. So I really think that our industry is up to date with new technology. And just a few weeks ago, and still now, this technology enabled us to continue our activities during the lockdown period. Most of our employees have worked from home, enabling us to reduce the risk of exposure and maintain as much as possible social distance from the teams that are fundamental to deliver our customers. And I'm really not sure that was possible 15 or 20 years ago. Just imagine. So whether the transformation are profound, like the digital, or sudden, like the pandemic, we have found a way, our industry have found a way to respond. But we are, however, engaged now in a deeper transformation that will take more time and require much greater effort. The energy transition is targeting our product and its application more directly. And it's about energy efficiency and renewable energy. So in a way, we have to reinvent ourselves again. And from being a simple energy supplier, we are already energy efficiency consulting. We support our customers in the energy transition to reduce their consumption or convert their installation to less polluting energy. And, and I'm sure that all distributors will come to the same conclusion. We are convinced that the LPG has a role to play here and now to reduce the greenhouse gas emission. At a time when we need to recover economically from the pandemic, propane is already available across Europe without additional investment in distribution structures. And it's the clean rural energy choice to replace the high carbon fuel on which many people in off-grid area depend. It is also an alternative fuel for car that is less polluting and does not require considerable investment in battery production. And the price of the LPG powered vehicle is also much lower than an electric car. So there is really there is really a place for the LPG right now. And considerable strategic efforts are being made by our company on bio-LPG. So we are targeting here the future. We have identified pathway to produce biopropane or butane. It's an emerging industry that needs support to develop. This is very promising for our customers. Bio-LPG is a blending solution, completely transparent for the user and require no change to appliance or distribution infrastructure. So the changes are more in the upstream of our current value chain. The supply is different. Our supplier has sometime new entrant on the biofuel production. And the main challenges are the investment to be made in biofuel production unit, and also the biofuel and gas accessibility in terms of price, because we will have to consider some premium on this product. And more specifically, we are concerned about the availability of the feedstock to produce the bio-LPG. So it's a complete new reason just in front of us, and we have many challenges to face. Over to you, Sam.
Very good, Cedric. I think you indeed covered a number of points that I would like to pick up maybe later on in the discussion part, especially with regards to the perspective for the uptake of bio-LPG, which you mentioned. Maybe a quick follow-up question on the rollout of Internet of Things, for your clients. I mean, do you see any resistance from some of them in terms of either privacy or skepticism on the value add?
Well, to be clear, we have equipped several thousand customers already, and I've not been informed of any refusal. And in fact, you must explain to your customer what you want to install and for what purpose. And definitely, it's not spam. We are essentially talking here about telemetry service, and the purpose of which is to ensure continuity of supply for our customer. And well, it's really difficult reasonably to refuse an improvement of the service that is proposed. And the device simply allow a daily control of the tank filling level, and this data improves stock visibility, allow us to move our delivery truck only when necessary. So not no not I don't have real bad feedback on it, sincerely.
Good. Thanks, Cedric. I seen all our panelists have not switched on their camera. Don't be shy. I think our participants would like to see you. And now we'll be moving to Paolo from the European Heating Industry Association. Thanks indeed for joining us. As I said, at a very short notice, so we appreciate the effort. A few words about Paolo's background. He is policy director at the European Heating Industry Association. Just a quick word on EHI. So they represent obviously the manufacturers of heating equipment. They cover 90% of the European market. Well done. That's indeed a very nice representation across all available technologies. So it does cover boilers, heat pumps, solar thermal systems, fuel cells, radiators, pretty much the whole value chain. Before joining EHI 6 years ago, Paolo was already working in the EU energy landscape as policy officer for Solar Power Europe. And now over to you, Paolo, for a few introductory remarks, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, well, you bragged for me about our market coverage as Association of the European Heating Industry, so I'm very happy you did it. So, but yes, so indeed we have a broad experience, and that's very good, I think, because we are covering really all the heating technologies and the whole heating system within the house. So the heat generator as the main part, your boiler, your heat pump, your solar thermal system, for example, or even your biomass boiler. But also the radiators, the underfloor heating, and all the components and also the digital elements that make the thermal comfort, so the fact of feeling well within your house, possible, both in terms of generation of indeed heat during the cold season, but also hot water for cooking, for washing, which are also very important parts of comfort. But without further hesitation, actually, I wanted to thank very much both Mr. Caudron and Ms. Mikhailova, MEP, for their interventions. In particular, I picked up some very, very interesting points in Ms. Mikhailova intervention. 80%, and this is a very important figure, of the buildings will be here in 2050. And this is crucial when we take into account the renovation wave. The point of energy poverty, and that also Samuel raised earlier on, and the point of digitalization are super important, and were rightly enough mentioned by the MEP. Maybe one thing that I think is one thing that I really want to say is that when people think of renovation, there's always and I'm saying this in the context, of course, of the renovation wave. One often thinks, okay, we're gonna insulate walls, we're gonna redo the roof, we're gonna insulate the ceiling. I mean, these parts are extremely important. So you really think of the building envelope. This is extremely important. However, I think that it is very important that we introduce very much and we stress in the concept of the renovation wave, the replacement of old and inefficient heating systems. Why am I saying this? I mean, think about the energy demand of a building. The energy demand of a building, more than 80% of that goes for heating needs and for production of hot water. So it's a huge chunk. This means, and this across Europe is done mostly in an inefficient way. I mean, the heating appliances that are installed in the houses and in the buildings of Europeans are 64% of them. So, where there are over 100 million appliances installed in Europe, more than the 60% of them are old, inefficient. you were to label them now, they would end up in classes C, D, lower of the energy label. I'm not talking only about, I mean, this is an event that is organized by Liquid Gas Europe. So, one would think immediately the relation with gas appliances. It's not only that, there are old inefficient gas appliances, there are old inefficient electric appliances in European buildings. This is the challenge. Now, this is also the opportunity. I mean, you can replace them. Today, if you replace one of these inefficient appliances with a state-of-the-art technology, for example, here, we're talking LPG, we're talking gas. Let's take a condensing boiler, which is the most common state-of-the-art technology for replacement in Europe at this stage. You save at least 20% in terms of energy, and you make very high CO2 cuts. When the appliance, of course, the appliance needs to be properly installed, but that's another matter that is very important. It's a matter of skills that we have to think of as well as part of the renovation wave. Even higher energy savings can be attained when you couple these technologies with renewables, for example, with hybrid heat pumps or with the coupling of boilers and solar thermal. There are real synergies that can be done in order to reduce energy use and cut CO2 emissions. Now, main problem, replacement rate is super low. It's now about 4% per year in Europe. Now, if you were to increase that replacement rate from 4 to 5%, you would get immediately by 2030 to a reduction in CO2 emissions of 40% on the 1990 basis on which the European Commission calculates energy savings for the Energy Efficiency Directive. So the opportunity is just massive. And, there are some barriers. Okay, we can talk about them later. I don't want to also bore you with with this. I mean, we can talk about them. But in my first introduction, I want to say the opportunity is there. The benefits for the European economy in the moment after COVID, they are huge. I mean, there is a value chain that is European. The manufacturing of heating appliances is a European industry with over 120,000 jobs of industrial jobs in Europe, and a huge value chain. And our friends here, those that distribute and produce energy, such as, for example, LPG, but the whole energy system is on the upstream, and on the downstream there's an impressive amount of local jobs of installers, of wholesalers. Now, in the case of liquid gas, there are also local jobs, of course, because you have to distribute this gas in a very localized way. So there's also that, but of course, I know this aspect less than Liquid Gas Europe does. But I think that the flywheel that you can make spin when you tackle this sector is huge. And this is why we propose that in the context of COVID, in this massive disruption that we are seeing, replacing old and inefficient heating appliances is in a way, it's a no-brainer. But you got to think about it. You have to propose it in a way that works in order to get to the energy efficiency gains and CO2 cuts that you have there. Replacing an old inefficient appliance with a new efficient appliance is a very cost-effective measure to reduce energy consumption, cut CO2 emissions, and make the European economic flywheel turn again. I will stop there because I don't want to go too long either. But I'm
Well,
happy to take questions.
Well, thank you very much, Paolo. I find it pretty striking what you said about the kind of huge savings you can make just by moving, from the current 4% rate of renovation of buildings, up to 5%. I think that really says a lot about the interest that you can have in also promoting incremental improvements of buildings. I mean, you don't necessarily need a revolution, every day, but the whole, switch from old and inefficient appliances to more modern, high efficiency heating systems can make a massive, indeed, difference. Now I would like to move on to our last, but certainly not least, panelist, Catherine Hannon from Callor Island, where she is public affairs and sustainability manager. As most of our participants know, I mean, Callor is part of the SLV Energy Group. Her role is to lead the company's advocacy and sustainability strategy, working with a wide range of stakeholders, including policymakers, trade associations, industry groups, and consumer representatives. Before joining Callor, Catherine was holding a number of different management roles in the manufacturing, technology, and energy sectors. And now over to you, Catherine, for giving us your perspective on the today's topic, i.e., disruptions.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Sam, and I'm delighted to be participating on the panel with my colleagues today. First of all, just to say that my role, as you mentioned, is to advocate for the needs of consumers, in particular rural consumers, as we navigate the energy transition. Just a couple of words about Callor in Ireland. We have been supplying liquefied petroleum gas to rural homes and businesses for 80 years. As you mentioned, Sam, we're part of the SHV Energy Groups. We're very involved, or I'm certainly involved, both at national level on energy policy, but also through our parent company at EU level. So just to say that we very much welcome and support the ambition for climate neutrality at EU level by 2050. We also welcome the EU Green Deal and all of those legislative milestones that are ahead. And from my side, if I just look through the consumer lens, so what I advocate for in my role is, how will all of these transitions and disruptions and legislative proposals impact on our consumer base? So if we think for a moment about rural consumers, if we think even about Ireland right now, over 75% of rural areas in Ireland are beyond the natural gas grid. If we look at the proportion of rural energy consumers in Europe, over 3/4 of the heating demand for homes in Europe comes from rural areas. So part of my job, both working in Callor with the LPG Association in Ireland through Liquid Gas Europe, it's how are the needs of those consumers represented, and how can we bring those significant numbers of rural consumers on this really important journey with us towards climate neutrality? What role can they play? What needs do they have that are specific? And how can we advocate for policies that are going to suit and meet the needs of those consumers? The first thing to say is that if you look at our business, Callor in Ireland, we are currently transitioning rural businesses, for example, that are using heavy fuel oil for a range of industrial processes, for heating applications, etc. And we are offering them the opportunity to move to a cleaner, lower carbon fuel, so moving and switching to LPG. We are also switching then in Ireland. We had a very, in terms of disruption, we had a very exciting milestone in Ireland. Back in 2018, we introduced bio-LPG to consumers, and we have made significant progress in transitioning some of our existing LPG customers to bio-LPG. So it's very important to see the steps along the way, to the opportunity for rural customers as a very first step to move from heavier polluting fuels like oil, like coal, and making the first step to LPG, which is a cleaner first step. And then importantly, offering them that transition ultimately to 100% renewable energy. As a company in Ireland, we've made a commitment to become 100% renewable. That the vision is to transition as a group by 2040. To do that, we must innovate, we must partner, we must collaborate, but we must keep the consumer at the heart of everything that we do. So in terms of energy policy, what I advocate for is a real assessment of the unique needs of rural customers. And two of those needs, are choice. So having a choice of technology, and also that really important question of affordability. So how can I make that energy transition, but in a very affordable way? So what does that mean to me? So for a lot of our consumers, it means making that switch, so transitioning their fuels, but also very importantly, just to speak to Paolo's point about the efficiency of appliances. So as an industry, we do a lot in terms of collaboration and partnership with the likes of industry players like Paolo's company, to ensure that we encourage our customers to switch their appliances to more efficient gas boilers, but also to look at how LPG can then be combined with other technologies. You mentioned hybrid heat pumps, micro CHP, etc. So there are a lot of options for our sector to play a very, very important role. In terms of the renovation wave, we fully support that whole concept of restarting and rebooting the economy, getting all of those players involved in this very, very important milestone, which is renovation. One thing we would say about LPG customers, as a part of that, is of course energy efficiency must come first, but we must also find ways that customers that are currently using gas, that they have the option to stay with gas like LPG, and they have an option to upgrade their boilers to more efficient gas boilers, but that they also then have the option to transition to 100% renewable gas over the coming years. And that is already a reality in Ireland. So Calar in Ireland this year will achieve 10% renewable energy amongst its customer base. So that's a very significant milestone. So this is not something that's conceptual, it's happening today, and we are already providing that opportunity to our customers. Sustainability is a huge topic. I am an advocate and I'm a champion for sustainability within our business. My role is a dual one. Sustainability is at the heart of our business strategy in Ireland, and it's something that's very, very important to SHV Energy. So what we try and do is we try to, have that conversation, bring consumers with us, be very aware of their needs. And once we're aware of their needs and we can meet those needs, they can play a very powerful role in this transition to climate neutrality by 2050. And it's a very exciting time for the industry. The final point I'll make is that sectoral integration. So when we look at, the option to transition to renewable gas, I think Paolo also mentioned, I've already said Rick as well, just the challenge of securing feedstocks, developing feedstocks, finding collaborative ways of working with other sectors that are also facing challenges around decarbonisation. How can we work together more closely to really, really achieve and to address the climate neutrality challenge? So that was everything I have to say. So very much with the lens of the consumer in mind, and making sure that the consumer is at the heart of all decisions that are made as we navigate that journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Again, I think you really well defined. I mean, the sort of policy challenges that are around not just our industry but the whole around the whole energy sector. And you actually gave me a really nice segue towards moving on to the panel discussion with regards to precisely, I mean, the type of policy challenges that we face and how they've been somewhat reshuffled recently, bearing in mind the COVID-19 crisis. So as we said earlier, there was and there is still very much of a focus on EU energy policies around decarbonization, energy efficiency. Somewhat air quality now is being brought further into the discussion. So my question to the panel is, do you think that now with much more people conscious of the impact of air quality and the quality of the air we breathe, do you think that will stay? I mean, are we experiencing a long-term shift in policy priorities at EU or national level with air quality much more the forefront? Iskra, would you like to start on that one?
Yes, do you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Absolutely. The pandemic isolation and quarantine, which was absolutely unusual situation for the most of the citizens of Europe, um, brought different approach concerning the quality of the air. First of all, in many big cities, people discovered that after 1 month sitting at home, using less cars, we have better quality of the air in the city. It happened in my own city, in Sofia, which is one of the dirtiest, of course. I'm sorry to say this, but we have problems with the quality of the air in the city. But I want to mention another approach of this issue. When we discussed during the pandemic quarantine the report on the maximizing the energy efficiency of the building stocks, we faced this issue concerning the air quality into the buildings, because it is very important to guarantee the health environment for the European citizens and to guarantee the health air inside the buildings. And this is related to all the materials used for the construction and renovation of the buildings. It is related to all the technologies used for heating and cooling of the buildings. It is related to all technologies used for pumping of water, for example. All the technology issues related to the building stocks are very close related to the quality of the air. So after this pandemic and after the idea and philosophy of renovation wave, we may speak not only of the quality of the air in the cities or in the rural areas, but also quality of the air inside the buildings we occupy. So this is the new approach for us. Thank you.
Paolo, I see you nodding. Would you like to add something?
Yeah, well, let me unmute myself. I think that yes, what MEP Mihailov has said is absolutely true. We've seen really a shift in many people's perception regarding what happens, because they have finally a comparison. That's what moves. I think that another interesting comparison that came out during the period of being confined at home and spending a lot of time there is really the quality of living inside the house. So yes, the air quality of the house, very important, but more generally the fact of being able to have the correct temperature setting in the various rooms of the house, also to optimize the fact that you're working there and therefore you need to be productive. It cannot be too warm, it cannot be too cold. The fact that since you're spending a longer time there, you need to have more comfort. And in that sense, new heating appliances, the one that can indeed constitute the replacement to the old ones, are way more flexible in guaranteeing that each and every room, for example, when they're combined with sensors, each and every room has, for example, a specific temperature. You could set up the temperature of every room thanks to the radiators that you have at home, installing specific valves and connecting them to the heating appliances. So the merge of new appliances on the one hand, the needs for comfort, and the digitalization to put these things together is something that we see as very interesting and very promising. It can be really promoted by the replacement of old systems.
Now, maybe moving on to another topic which was raised earlier, which was also the subject of a question that was asked by the audience on by Matthew Hill about the prospect for the growth of bio LPG. Obviously, that's a massive both disruption, but also a massive opportunity for industry to make our contribution to decarbonization pathways for Europe. So the question is, what is the prospect for this growth? What can be the potential barriers, and what do we need also from the policy environment to manage to get the proper investment in the ramp up of bio LPG production? Catherine or Cedric, would you like to pick that up?
Perhaps, yeah, I'm happy to say a few words on that, Sam. So obviously, I mean, Calar and SHV are very proactive in terms of the production and supply of bio LPG currently. So yes, it's correct that one of the challenges is that we must grow in terms of volumes in order to meet demand and also to meet our ambitious targets of decarbonisation. Right now, we have a collaboration and agreement with Neste, who is a world-leading biofuel supplier in Rotterdam. That's one source of bio LPG today. We're looking at, we have a dedicated research and development team who spend their time traveling the world seeking future sources of bio LPG. So there are a number of things that are important here. One of them, just to mention, is this idea of sectoral integration and collaboration. So one example from SHV's side is a very strategic agreement that was reached between SHV, KLM, and Sky Energy to cooperate on the first sustainable aviation fuel plant in the Netherlands. So if we look at the aviation sector, they have a challenge that they need to decarbonize. We're trying to decarbonize the LPG sector for rural consumers. So we can come together, collaborate, and both of us get a solution to the challenge that we're facing. So in this situation, we were able to offtake bio LPG from the production of sustainable aviation fuel. So that's just one example of innovation, which is very important. So from a policy perspective, it's encouraging that sectoral cooperation, integration, innovation. One other option in terms of the pathways for bio LPG that could be considered is the concept of refineries, and how could we adapt and develop and look at maybe refineries switching to biorefineries to help us with that feedstock and with that supply challenge. And then finally, I would say it's also the ability to innovate on feedstocks. If you look at the development of RED II, it's when you've got companies like SHV, how can we be supported in innovating and finding new ways of making bio LPG?
Right. Thank you very much, Catherine. I wish we could take a lot more questions, but time is almost ticking. It's already 12 o'clock. Cedric, would you like to give a final word on the prospect for bio LPG and your take on that?
Yes, and thank you, Sam. I welcome the comment from Catherine, because it's really key to cooperate, to work together on this topic, because it's a key topic for the future. There is some sources of bio LPG right now, but there is just a few sources of LPG, and many experts agree that something like 100 production sites have to be launched on biofuel production in order to meet 2030 European target. So it's a huge challenge for the industry to invest in such production, and our industry may have to consider to be more involved in the production than we have been previously. We are a distributor, but maybe we have to switch to the upstream also in order to increase the production of the bio LPG, because it's our product, and maybe some of the existing producers are considering to reduce as much as possible the production of the LPG, because they don't know a lot of this market, and sometimes they ignore the production of the bio LPG. And the bio LPG right now is only a co-production of existing processes that are market ready, but there is no real process that targets directly the LPG as a main product. So we have to be involved really in the upstream to increase this production, and maybe we can do it together.
Absolutely, great word for the conclusion, Cedric. Thank you very much indeed. As I said, I mean, there were like so much more to cover, but we need to wrap up now. So I think it's been a very dense and very insightful discussion. For me, the key learning from this roundtable, as far as I'm concerned, really is that with resilience and with creativity, any disruption can possibly turn into an opportunity. And I'm really thankful for to our panelists. I mean, to bring this positive tone to discussion about how we can address them and overcome these disruptions and really lay a great future for our energy. I have only three things to say. I mean, to finish. The first one is obviously that the recording of the webinar will be available on our website soon. So please rewatch, prepare your popcorn, and make sure you rewatch and share it with your colleagues who may not have been able to join us today. The second thing I wanted to say is that this webinar is just one among a series of three. So we have two more coming, I mean, next week and the week after next on the June 30th and July the 7th. Next week is on the LPG and the consumer perspective. And the third one will be on LPG applications of today and tomorrow. So please keep following us. I kept the most important for the end. A massive thank you to our panelists for their great contribution, their time and effort into preparing this webinar. So many thanks to you, Iskra Mihailova, Cédric Caudron, Paolo Basso, and Catherine Hannon for a great discussion. I also extend a thank you note to the Liquid Gas Europe team who helped me in preparing this webinar. And Sarah in particular was behind us dealing with all the technical elements. So without further ado, I wish you all a very nice day. Bon appetit, because it's almost lunchtime now. And we'll see you soon for the next webinar next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Bye.
much.
Very much.